What's up, guys, and welcome back to Beyond the Void Horror Podcast. My name is Alex, and today we're going to be doing our episode 2 of season 2 of Creepshow. And it's a spoiler discussion, so let's go! So you'll have to excuse me, I'm a little foggy today, as I had a birthday celebration and drank quite a bit. So I'm feeling pretty good. Feeling great. Anyway, as some of you may know, we do spoiler discussions and kind of talk about the episode here, who made the episode, who was in the episode, and so on. So if you don't want anything spoiled, I suggest you go and watch the episode 2 with Dead and Breakfast and Pesticide before you actually listen to this. But this is your warning. So episode 2 of Creepshow. This was not my favorite episode thus far. The first one definitely had a little bit more gusto to it, but there is a few bright spots in this one. I don't mind too much. First up, we got Dead and Breakfast, which is a segment about a hotel that was owned by a serial killer by the name of Granny Spinster, who supposedly killed all these people. And they're trying to make money off of it, turning it into some sort of like a horror theme park or ghost destination. It's a brother and sister duo, and they're pretty silly when it comes to trying to get people scared, and it's not going so well. Now, this episode segment, Dead and Breakfast, is actually directed by Axel Carolyn, someone that has worked on quite a bit of different things. She actually directed a movie called Soulmate that she also wrote. She also did a segment in Tales of Halloween called Grim Grinning Ghost, and she also did The Haunting of Bly Manor, an episode in that. Just a few things off the top. This was also directed by Michael Rousselet, who is, of course, one of the people that started the 5-second films and then moved into Dude Bro Party Massacre number 3 and Cyanide and Happiness and a few other things. We also have Eric Sandoval, who's also been a part of 5-second films and Cyanide and Happiness and 2 to help write the script for this one. We have stars Ali Larter, who all of us remember is from Final Destination, the girl who's always working in the shop and then goes crazy in part 2. That's her. We also get C. Thomas Howell from The Hitcher, Outsiders, E.T. So it's got a pretty decent cast. However, this segment in particular just didn't flow the best for me, and with some of the writing talent that there is behind it, I expected it to be much more funny. And as I mentioned before, this hotel is, of course, dying out. They're not getting any guests, and all these other horror destinations or all these serial killer locations are selling out and booking up all the way until months later, and they're struggling to try to get that crowd. They know the crowd's out there, but they don't know how to get it. And everyone that does come, they keep scaring off in not scares, but just ridiculousness. Like one of the brothers wears like a severed head hat and comes in squirting blood all over him, which I'm like, I would never do that to some guest, but that's what they're trying to do. So they decide that they're going to get some sort of YouTuber personality to basically do a review on their establishment. Since their grandmother was this crazy lady who killed a bunch of people, it should be a pretty easy no-brainer fucking move, right? Well, the girl who does this show called The Morgue, or she's Morgan, she goes by The Morgue or something like that. She basically comes by and says, hey, this place looks cool and all, but there's no proof that there was ever any bodies. So the house gets really pissed at her. She's showing them all around. They got trap doors on like candlesticks on the wall, all these different hiding rooms and stuff like that. So after that, the girl goes online, tells all her fans that the place sucks. It's not a good place to come. All the bookings that were there when she first showed up go down, and they start to panic a little bit. So the next morning they make breakfast and she comes down. She's a vegetarian, so she won't have any of what they're having. And she says, hey, look, I'm sorry I was kind of rough on you guys last night. I didn't mean to be rude. Maybe we can find out where the bodies were and do our own little investigation. So they go searching around the house, opens up the stairs, and she's like, oh, that's grandma's fucking poison stash. And she's like, yeah, some poison stash. It's like whiskey, brandy, and all this, other stuff. She starts like scanning the walls and going down. And this part kind of like caught me off guard. She's like, do you mind if I just, tear a hole in this wall in your hallway? No big deal. And they're like, oh yeah, go ahead. Just go on ahead. Like, I understand that they're going to both benefit from this, finding whatever they find, but that seems a little weird. But I guess they just do it anyway. I can write that off. So they find, it's Grandma's body locker. And then the girl who is the YouTuber, somehow, because she's into true crime, knows how to pick, open up a combination lock on the outside of a giant safe, which is ridiculous to say the least. And the granddaughter opens up the safe. To her surprise, it's nothing but a sewing table with a sewing machine on top. The fact that they didn't investigate this, by the way, was kind of a pet peeve of mine, because there's so many trap doors and everything in this place. Wouldn't you kind of at least jostle it a little bit just to see? I don't know. And then, of course, the YouTuber, then again, goes online to try to basically let everybody know that this place sucks, and they start losing credibility yet again, and they're upset. That night, she's like, oh, you want to get a scare then? The granddaughter decides that she's going to scare the shit out of her in her sleep. And of course, the YouTuber overhears her and is ready for that. So that night, she goes in to scare her, and she gets sprayed in the face with some ghost pepper spray, but she gets really pissed off and decides to swing the axe at her anyway, cutting the YouTuber on her chest. And the YouTuber escapes and finds the Wi-Fi and goes live, and then gets chopped up by the granddaughter because she's so pissed off, and nobody believes it's real. It's like, oh shit, but then they start getting a bunch of bookings. They look online, and all the bookings go up to like 30, 40. So the brother decides to strangle out his sister. A year later, he's got the murder-suicide house, the actual murder-suicide house, because his sister now murdered a YouTuber and then hung herself, even though he choked her out with some rope. And business is good, boy. He's got tons of money. He's just really excited. And he goes to put the money into the body locker room where the sewing machine is and bumps into it. And the floor gives way and he falls into a pit where Grandma actually put the bodies. Twist. Not the greatest twist, but still pretty cool. And the fact that he gets locked down in there so that, pretty much all the bad people pretty much get taken care of in this movie. They get their just desserts. For the most part, this one was kind of a miss for me. We did, of course, have another segment that I thought was a little bit better, which is called Pesticide. This, of course, was directed by Greg Nicotero. It was written by Frank Dietz, who is a writer, producer, actor, director, and he even animated some of Disney's Tarzan movie. This one, of course, is about a pesticide guy who gets offered a job. He's kind of the creepy guy that he is. He enjoys killing off these bugs a little too much and thinks he's a little too something. Thinks he's hot shit pretty much for being this kind of a scummy pesticide guy. This one is starring Josh McDermott, who, as you guys probably already know, is from Walking Dead fame as Eugene.
You try one of these? They're chewy. They, got some fat in them.
Yeah, that guy. I actually really liked his character in both The Walking Dead and this segment. He's very different than he would be in The Walking Dead, but he does a really good job here, I think. We also get legend Keith David, who's been in movies like They Live, The Thing, and many, many, many more. So the segment starts out, he's spraying bugs and killing bugs left and right at this lady's house who happens to be a therapist, and he walks in on her to get the bill paid, and he's really rude to her when she says, can you just wait outside real quick? While the fucking therapist is dealing with someone who's crying there, and they're embarrassed that this person walked in on their therapy session and is seeing them in this state. She keeps telling him to leave, but he just won't take a fucking hint and says that he's the king and he needs to get paid right away. She eventually does pay him and tells him she'll never use him ever again. And he's like, oh, you'll be back, and throws his card in the room. Eventually, the pest guy gets another job and he goes to check it out, and it's Keith David in the middle of nowhere in this abandoned building or whatever, and he's thinking, oh man, this is a pretty big job. I gotta spray everywhere, but where is anybody? Keith David, of course, pops up out of nowhere. His name is Murdoch in this show, and he tells him that he's got a pretty big pest situation, and he's got several different buildings that he's going to be expanding and building homes for, and he's got quite the pest problem that he's going to need his help with. And of course, the pest guy's like, oh, I can handle anything. I'm the fucking king, am I right? Except one problem. The pest that Murdoch is asking the pest guy to remove is homeless people. And Keith David's character is all like, oh, you are the king. You're the king. You know how to do this, right? You can handle this. No problem. You got this. What's the difference between killing a bug, an animal, an alligator, a rat? They're practically dead already. They just won't leave. And then Keith opens up his big briefcase full of money. And he's like, wouldn't this help you get a new van, et cetera, et cetera? And so the guy's like, okay, maybe I'll just do this one. And then he goes back that night and he's like got poison strapped to his chest like fucking shotgun shells and like his like face covered and stuff like that. And he goes back to the homeless den and there's like a pot of stew and he plans to pour some of his like own concoction of poison that he would use on pests into their stew of or whatever that they may have eaten that day. He has a second thought and he's like, nah, I'm not going to do this. But one of the homeless people wakes up and tries to attack him, which makes him drop the vial of the green stuff in the soup. And he has to fight off this guy and he slams one in his mouth. Do you guys remember that movie, The Rock, way back with Nicolas Cage and Sean Connery? Nicolas Cage shoves that thing in the dude's mouth and like uppercuts his jaw. That's kind of what it reminded me of because it was the green thing.
Eat that, you fuck!
But it kills the homeless guy and he runs off. He goes home and starts having visions about bugs on him. 2 dreams that night. One of Mr. Murdoch coming back to get his money and spraying him with like some sort of poison. And then he wakes up and then it's another dream and it's him getting bit by a fucking rat while he's trying to grab some money off the ground and it bites his hand off and he's like, oh, which was cool. I like that part. But it's pretty clear that, you know, Keith David is actually the devil making people do bad things so that they can go to hell. And even the pest guy says that. So he starts going to another job and he's starting to see like bugs all over him and stuff. Like one trying to sting his chest and suck blood out, like a fly on his seat in his van, and like all this crazy shit that's like making him go nuts. He even has this vision where this spider comes and like bites him on the fucking neck. Pretty cool looking. I mean, I don't know. I'm pretty sure that was like all K&B effects right there. But he snaps out of it and he realizes that he's at that therapist that he was at in the very beginning of the segment. And she's like, what are you doing here? And he's like, I did bad things. I did really bad things. He poured all of his cockroaches in there to leave as a present, as an FU to her. And she knows this. But this is the part that was kind of caught me off guard. I wasn't really expecting this, why it was happening like this, but it was cool nonetheless. He gets some therapy from her and she's willing to help him out, trying to like figure out what's going on with him. And she's like, obviously you haven't had any sleep. You keep nodding out in the middle of me talking to you. Maybe I'll just go get you some tea and you can just relax. And he falls asleep and he wakes up and he's about the size of a cockroach on the couch. And that part I didn't really understand. I'm still a little, did she use like a witch's brew or something like that? Or I'm so confused on that. So he wakes up a little mini person and she's like smacking it with a fucking newspaper, which is kind of cool. I actually love that part because I was like, ooh, God, can you imagine? And then when she lifts it up, you see his little arm dangling. His little fucking arm dangling in the fucking on the newspaper and it's like all bloody. And then she hears the doorbell and it's of course Keith David's character Murdoch showing up in an exterminator suit ready to fucking get rid of any pests. He said, I hear you got a pest problem. Ha 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 ha. This one was okay. Like I liked this one more than the first one. I think this one was a pretty decent one. Like I enjoyed watching it and what happened because there was a lot of crazy stuff that happens in it. But ultimately this episode in particular was a little bit on the low end for a score if I had to score it, you know. It was like kind of average if you ask me. Slightly above with the pesticide segment. Like that's how I feel about it. But, you know, hopefully we get a better episode next week. I'm still enjoying it. I'm sure we're going to get some goodies in there. What did you guys think of these 2 segments and this particular episode? Was it high or low on your viewing watch list? Did you enjoy it or just kind of enjoy it? Thanks for coming by. And as always, long live the void.